mkombozi. Amezaliwa Raila mtetezi.
2024 ikiwa mzuri kuliko ile ya 2023. Tunataka ushuru ishuke. Gharama ya maisha irudi chini.
Tuwache mashindano, tuwache hujuma, tuwache mabishano, tuwache kutafuta umaarufu.
Mmekuwa kwa power mwaka moja na wananchi wanaumia.
Zakayo awache kutoza watu ushuru. Zakayo ashuke aje hapa chini pamoja na sisi.
Hakuna nchi itaendelea bila ushuru. Sasa nauliza jameni, hata tukiwa watu milioni 50 ndio tuko kwa Kenya hii, rais wetu anasema tutoe ushuru. Tukitoa shilingi moja, hata mwenye hakwenda shule, hiyo ni milioni 50. Tukitoa shilingi 10 ni milioni 500. Tukitoa shilingi 1000 ni bilioni karibu 5.
Wale walio katika judiciary, wale walio katika legislature, nataka niwaulize, jameni, tuungane, tuwache mashindano.
As the leadership of Kenya Kwanza, we shall not agree and frustrate the policies and the plan of William Samoei Ruto.
I will not tell you what we will do with them, but we shall deal with the ignorance of the judiciary. I have never failed you and I will not fail you on this one.
Is what we call judicial adventurism. People who have gone beyond the reach of what they are supposed to do.
Those of you who are leaders in the judiciary, in the executive, in the legislature, you will be judged on what you do for the vulnerable.
Use our judicial system ikiwe activism system. Tafadhali wafanye kazi yao ya kuweka haki kwa Wakenya. Sisi kule bunge tuliokubaliana na wewe wakati wa uchaguzi, tukakubaliana na wewe na agenda yako, na tunasimama kidete kuona sheria zile zinapitishwa kule bunge inaimarisha na inaendelesha ile malengo na ahadi uliyopatia Wakenya.
Kama tupitishe yale mambo yote ambayo yanaguza vyumba na maneno ya afya. Lakini inashangaza Mheshimiwa Rais kwamba watu wachache wanaketi pale na wanaanza kutoa sheria, majaji ambao wajui sisi kila Jumamosi tunachanga kusaidia wale watu ambao wanaumizwa na ugonjwa wa kansa.
Unajua ajabu ni kwamba wale wanaenda kupinga kotini, yeye tayari yako na bima ya afya. Alafu unaenda kupinga mwananchi mwingine asipate. Na hiyo ako naye bima ya afya, ako naye comprehensive medical care, inalipwa na hawa wananchi. Sio ni uadui ya kupindukia jameni.
Kuuliza swali tunaambiwa tusulize. Iko independence of the judiciary. But somebody must also hold them to account. And they also must be accountable. And they must also accept to be held to account. We want to ask the judiciary that let them put the interest of the nation ahead of any other consideration, so that they can be able to be part and parcel of an arm of government that is supporting the transformation of our country.
Mjue wananchi wanaumia. Na kama hamutarekebisha hii msafara, usicheza na wananchi. Msicheza na wananchi. Hiyo si onyo, it is the truth. It is the truth.
I am telling every member of parliament, between today and tomorrow, we are releasing another 10 billion shillings for the bursary program. In the last 1 year, tumeajiri watu 1,120 kwa housing program. Alafu kuna mtu anasema tusimamishe. Tusimamishe hawa watu 1,120 wafanye kazi wapi?
Right, and of course those were some of the political statements that were doing over the weekend and yesterday as well. We just want to pick up the brains of our panelists here. Let's just begin with you, Dan Mazo, on that particular note, because it seems that is your fraternity when it comes to judiciary, you being also a lawyer. And ask the same question to some of the panelists. LSK was always meant to actually be in the streets this week.
Yes.
Right. Will you be part of that?
Well, why not?
Are you part of
I'm a member of
judicial activism? So, what is your rejoinder on what you've had so far?
Yes. First and foremost, there is you know, separation of powers under the new constitution. The executive proposes a law, and then that law comes to Parliament, in this case for Finance Bill, the National Assembly. And then if something has not been agreed upon, or if Parliament has erred, then that error or that law which has been passed and is signed by the executive can be rectified. You know, if there are unconstitutional sections or sections without proper infrastructure, legal infrastructure, like acts of Parliament, as the courts find out in the case of you know, the levy, the housing levy, because it was one time is a tax, another time is a levy, and where is it premised? So the biggest problem in all this blame game is executive. They proposed this law and gone to influence Parliament to pass this law in a certain way through lobbying, if I'm kind enough, and also bribery. So if the source of bribery is the executive and the recipient is the National Assembly, and you end up with a dead law, unconstitutional law, then what do you expect the judge to do? The judge has to hold it unconstitutional if it is unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. And the judge's independence cannot be taken away. You cannot now intimidate, you cannot frustrate the judge. And it is the same thing, I will say, it is likened to the Floyd case. You have a power whose knee is on everybody. The knee is on Parliament. Parliament is no longer independent. So it passes a law which is dead. It cannot serve the nation. Then when it's gone to the judiciary. Now you want to press your knee again to the judiciary. And the judiciary cannot breathe. Parliament cannot breathe. The people cannot breathe. What are you looking for? Then you get a few members of Parliament from your region to threaten, you know, the House, to threaten the judiciary. And then also you get a few fellows from your village to come and demonstrate in Nairobi. We want the houses. Yet these fellows demonstrating in Nairobi that they want the houses. They can never afford a 3-4 million house, and they will never be factored. So the worst thing happening in this country is corruption. And if the corruption was be stemmed off from the president's office, from State House, don't influence the thinking of the member. Allow members of Parliament to debate, and if they disagree with you, also allow it. But if you have intimidated the Parliament, and everybody's tricked to believe if you support the president, that's how development is going to come to your village. Most of them will be surprised. After 4 years, the government will have done nothing in their village, and it will be very difficult to be re-elected. And the same political party, they will say you have become unpopular, and they'll give the ticket to somebody else, who, when they go to the House, are going to repeat the same thing. So we must have independence of the House, and the whole House is actually supposed to check government. The majority are not government. The majority are independent. The majority and minority in the House are fully. So in some occasions, Honorable Ichung'wah should disagree with the government and advise it correctly on some of these legislative proposals. And therefore, that's why we are in a problem. This bad law has raised the cost of living in the country. And when you raise the cost of electricity and illegally, you raise all manner of taxes. I saw the member of Parliament try to say you pay 1 shilling, you have this. But now you have taken everything from Kenyans. The taxation is almost 60%. If you sum it up from salt, sugar, everything. Then if you do that, then people need to see the job be done. If you overtax people like this and they have no potholes, they have development going on, they will be happy. But where is this money going to? This money is leaky somewhere, either in care or in treasury. All that we are collecting, you can't see it in action. It is in somebody's pocket. And therefore the judiciary has to stand firm and be consistent so that you are not compromised at one point, and then another point you are said not to be compromised. It has to be standard. And if a judge has been compromised, that evidence exists It should be given to Judicial Service Commission. And they have handled some of the cases very well. But judiciary should also not participate in politics. It should not make decisions which are favorable simply to a political class to make it happy and to vanquish the country. And that's why some of the politicians are saying, don't play around with Kenyans. This is how to, you know, first of all, you are forcing Kenyans to cause a revolution in their minds. And they should make a revolution to vote wiser. You know what the current government has encouraged is serious tribalism and an attitude which is very nasty. You know, Kenyans are not electing a government to have a certain attitude. Just be fair. And whatever resources we collect, use it wisely for the people. But we are raising resources that are being stolen day in, day out, and they are only be accessed. We are raising taxes for 2 or 3 people to put it into their pocket to enrich themselves, you know, go for trips abroad and you know, instead of taking care of education of children, which will equalize everybody in the country and make everybody useful in the country.
Right, John Buddy, when we look at that, I don't know what will be a reaction. We have the Deputy Majority Speaker there saying, you know, we will deal with the judicial ignorance. From your assessment, what will be the judicial ignorance? And when you have, you know, one part of government sort of really amputating the other side of the government, which will be part of it, like you have, of course, the 3 arms of government being the legislature and, of course, the executive, the judiciary, and one of is castigating and casting aspersions on the other. What do we perceive, we as Wananchi?
You know, and Shule is my colleague in Parliament and a friend. She's the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. I want to say she's the one who is ignorant. There's no judicial ignorance. She's the one who is ignorance about the responsibility and the role of the judiciary in our constitution. I want to speak to the president and speak also to his sycophants that this constitution, the 2010 constitution, did not drop like a manna from heaven to Kenyans. We fought for it. Kenyans lost their lives. Kenyans were maimed. There are people who are still alive but would be living more healthy life than they are. If they think that because they are in power, they can subvert and erode the gains that the people of Kenya gave themselves through this constitution, they are in for a rude shock. I will tell you, if they thought there is only one Raila Odinga in this country, they are giving birth to so many Raila Odingas, some who are even younger. They should prepare as many jails as possible, the cells for us to be put in. We are not going to allow the president and his sycophants to take Kenya back to before 1990. It is not going to work. And if they are deluding themselves that that is what they want, that is what they will do, they will not succeed. You cannot choke and suffocate Kenyans. You cannot intimidate the judiciary. And I hope and I pray that our judiciary is not going to be intimidated. This is blackmail. How can the president now talk the way he's speaking when he assumed power, he pretended and cheated and lied to Kenyans? Although we know him, this is the real Ruto, the one that we are now seeing. But the Ruto from September 2022 was a fake one. The one who pretended to tell Kenyans that he's going to obey and respect the rule of law is not the Ruto we know. And now the Ruto we know is coming up. But we are telling him he's living in a different environment. Kenyans are more alert, are more educated, are having a stronger constitution that we didn't have so many years ago when Kanu and Moi regime was choking us. How can you now tell the whole country that you are not going to obey and respect court orders? You are not above the law. You should read Article 132 of the Constitution. One of the cardinal roles given to the president is that he should be reporting to Kenyans every year on the progress made and the gains in terms of actualizing Article 10 of the Constitution, which is the national values. And one of the national values is rule of law. Then you are telling us that you are not going to enforce rule of law. You are sliding the country into anarchy. What if all Kenyans now decide to set aside the rule of law? And if I want to now invade you, you want to invade my house in Karen, you just come and invade my house in Karen if you have more strength than I do? Would that be the country that we are calling for? Ruto should prepare for serious resistance. And people are going to go to the streets. Those who had not even gone to the street before will go. You can see the church now has started speaking. You can see the civil society, the Law Society of Kenya. Some politicians who are quiet are now going to speak. This is something we are not going to allow because, look, he is only now seeing corruption in the judiciary. And I'm not saying judiciary is clean. We have talked about it before. Remember, President Uhuru refused to appoint some judges. He came into office and appointed them without even any investigation. And he's saying he was obeying the law, which is perfect, good. But now why is he saying that there are corrupt judges? If what Uhuru said yesterday, he didn't agree to. He's only seeing corruption because these judges have issued orders against some of his policies which are clearly unconstitutional. And he was warned, by the way. People told him, how do you start taking money from Kenyans on a program that does not even have a policy? If I may ask you today, what is the policy around this affordable housing? There is no policy. You cannot start taxing people, then develop policy later. Who are going to benefit from these houses? How is that going to be? You are taking my money. If you take my money to NSSF, I know when I retire, I'll get it. If you take my money to NHIF, which is now SHIF, I know when I fall sick, there's some benefits. If you take my money as pay as you earn, I know it is going to develop roads, develop schools, where my children, even if not directly, some children from my village will learn. If you're taking my money to develop houses, tell me who is going to benefit from those houses before you take that money. And you are told, we will take it whether you like it or not. If judiciary dares stop us, we will ignore them and then crush them. And then you call for a meeting in your village, as Honorable Manzo puts it, and you get your sycophants from the village, people who are now no longer speaking for the people. They are speaking to please you as a president so that they can retain their seats. And then they spew venom. You hear people threatening judiciary. Which country is this? This is not the Kenya that we thought we were promulgating in 2010, August. 2010, we thought there was a paradigm shift. We thought things were going to be different. There was fresh air in the air. I mean, freshness in the air. Kibaki was hailed as the president was presiding over a rebirth of a nation. Uhuru, with all his weaknesses, left us a constitution that is largely intact. A lot of rulings were made against Uhuru, some of which he also ignored, and I blame him for that, including allowing Miguna to come back to the country. But he also respected the judgment of the coast. Despite his anger, he's the first president who lost an election petition in the region. He's the first president who lost a petition against his pet project of BBI, but he accepted it. Ruto must accept when the judiciary makes decision against him. He is partly in the office courtesy of the judiciary. He must remember that.
Right, so doggedly following that, we had previously his pronouncement, or really his statement, saying that he has been given the mandate by Kenyans to the sword, and he can use it every which way he wants to thwart, so to speak, the way he was putting it, whatever impediment that is coming his way. But we had other, pundits coming to the fore and saying, that particular sword is not for a decapitation of Kenyans, but it is for, the protection of the Constitution in the first place. You talk about the judiciary and the judges that were not installed by Uhuru Kenyatta because he had questions also regarding these judges. And when we saw the current regime really coming to take the baton, the first thing that he did, of course, was to call all those judges at State House, and they were paraded there, and we saw also that they were being absorbed into the judicial system, as it were. So when you complain about corruption, and we had also those questions that were lingering on some of these judges as well, does he appear to be double-speaking on the issue of corruption, and that's being systemic within the judiciary?
You know, a judge is somebody who holds power also donated by the people, and it must be exercised fairly and within the law. Now, when somebody asks questions, that you see governments enjoy something called perpetual succession. You see what this government was doing, you have to be technical enough or professional enough to let the process be completed, because the Constitution has allocated different people to complete these processes. So if you clear a judge who there's overwhelming evidence against them, and even them they know it, that they have participated in corruption and have received monies, and that evidence exists, and you go on and appoint them, you now have to begin the other journey of getting them subjected to Judicial Service Commission. But in this country now, there's no proper witness protection. So I am aware of quite a number of witnesses who have mysteriously died, and their deaths have not been demystified. So people are increasingly scared of giving evidence against corruption. And more important, when you have a corrupt government practicing corruption openly on the floor of the House and with the Parliament, and then you go on now to tell Kenyans, we will not accept corruption from judiciary, yet you put judges there without a process, then it becomes very complicated. But we really must strengthen institutions. We cannot run down a government institution. And there's no single Kenyan who is above the law, including the president. He's only protected against criminal proceedings. But Article 143, 144 doesn't shield him. If a president, for example, commits murder, he's not going to be kept there and he has committed murder or manslaughter. You'll have to be impeached and then subjected to, or forced to resign, and then subjected to the processes of law. And meanwhile, also, when you exit, all those things you did can still be revisited. So we need to leave the rule of law, to have fairness, and to have an attitude of building Kenya. President Kibaki was exceptional. As soon as he came to power, the shilling gained against the dollar, and he put systems. He knew he was part of the previous system at one point as a vice president. So he said, from wherever we are now, can we build Kenya as we correct the past? But that's not what you have seen with this government. This government comes and blames the previous government which they were part of. Then they start a few things, and I'll give a very good example. Kenya Meat Commission had gone, because of the sales to the military, there was some control, so that the military also doesn't buy from outside certain source. And then it's first removed from the, military management is removed. Then after a few days, they do what Uhuru Kenyatta was doing. And that's what they've done in very many things, that you realize you wanted to politically depart from Uhuru Kenyatta. It was not about Uhuru Kenyatta. Our government is with so many other components and so many other participants and so many other institutions which prepare briefs. You see, the DCI prepares briefs. You must respect investigations. But if you discard the investigations and scare the investigators, then people be prosecuted for economic crimes are going to be let scot-free by the courts. If you present cases to courts which has no evidence, the courts will have no choice but to release that particular person, even when he's a criminal and even when he has benefited unfairly from government coffers. So we need to reorganize the country. We need the goodwill, and that partly comes when you change a government. Kenyans are looking for a Kibaki spirit to lead this country again.
Thank you. All right, so we want to just look at this as well, turning away from the judiciary, that is still a developing story, and talk about Baba's 2024 diary. We have it here as editorialized as a cartoon by Steno. Which method will be more effective? Maandamano daily, Punda Michoka, referendum boycott, some products, impeach Ruto, swearing in Baba. Some of us, of course, we've heard from Raila Odinga that they'll still be back on the streets if the cost of living does not really go down. We've heard the National Dialogue Committee. This really came a cropper as far as effectiveness of this is concerned, so we can't have any tangible results that came from it. So the question would be that I wanted to ask, we still have that particular debate that of 2027, and I just wanted to read some of the statement that during the 79th birthday, Murade said this, that Raila will be the 2027 presidential flag bearer. Those holding contrary opinions should pause or hold their horses. If Malawi people picked a president at 90, so what's strange? What's strange with Raila's case? Posed Murade during Raila's 79th birthday celebrations in Kilifi County. And we had also this is the People Daily saying that his suggestion comes after Wiper boss Kalonzo Musyoka declared that he will be on the ballot in 2027 and will not support Raila's presidential ambition again. Kalonzo's close ally and Kitui Senator Enoch Wambua told of Murade saying that this is advice, or his advice or opinion was unsolicited. And we have you, Dan Manzo, dismissing Murade, and you backing Kalonzo for the top seat in 2027. Presidential elections, adding that the Wiper leader is the most acceptable candidate to face off with President Ruto, not Raila. According to Manzo, they have tried the former Prime Minister thrice but failed, adding that even if they still support Raila, Central Kenya will still reject him. I want just to hear from Honorable Mbadi with these developments here so far. Are you seeing a fissure now that it is cracking, that is bound maybe to be a big wedge and a splinter within Azimio, especially on this particular statement?
There's nothing strange about the current developments. Every time we finish election or conclude election, there is always debate whether Raila should run or not. I remember when we were done with the 2013 elections, it was the same story. After 2017 elections, it was the same story. I'm not saying Raila is going to run again in 2027, but that to me is a debate that we need to engage in internally as a coalition, and more particularly, first deal with pressing issues. Then automatically 2027 will come into place. Because what we need to deal with today is what is affecting Kenyans.
Yes.
What is it that is more relevant to the ordinary Kenyan today? It's about the cost of living.
Yes.
It's about this attack and assault on the judiciary. It's about the general management of our economy and the dictatorial tendencies that we see emerging out of the current president. And then we organize ourselves. In terms of leadership, I want to repeat, leadership is never given. Leadership is fought for. Leadership is something you work very hard on. Raila Odinga has not reached where he has simply by being Raila Odinga. He has fought hard to be where he is. And I also guess Kalonzo Musyoka the same, and many other leaders in Azimio. Let us engage constructively in this discussion at the appropriate time and see who can remove Ruto from power. It calls for, one, what you stand for. Kenyans must identify themselves with what you stand for. Two, it also calls for your ability to galvanize and rally support across the country behind you. Three, and finally, is your ability to be able to conduct a national campaign. So all these things are things that we are going to discuss. And by the way, the leaders that we talk about, Raila and Kalonzo, are very close. They engage almost daily. I may say Raila will run in 2027 and he says he's not running. Will I force him? I may say Kalonzo will have to run and then he decides not to run and support Raila. Will Dan Manzo force him?
He can't.
He cannot. So why are we trying to bring a wedge now between these leaders unnecessarily? Remember the other day, Kalonzo was in Bondo, and I was in that meeting. And Raila spoke so positively about him. And a lot of things that he said, I would also associate with. And he said, if I'm given Ruto and Kalonzo, obviously the choice is Kalonzo. And he said clearly how Kalonzo has been with him. And then no one can deny that Kalonzo has supported Raila in 2013. He supported him in 2017.
Yes.
Against all expectations, or most of the expectations in 2022, he still stood with Raila. That's not something that is lost even to Raila's diehard supporters. We are aware of that. And so what we need is to manage the relationship within our coalition. And I want to plead with those who are talking the way they are talking. That let us hold our horses. Let us hold each other in this coalition. Kenyans are depressed. Kenyans are hopeless. They are seeing hopelessness. They cannot afford another tenure for Ruto. Let us not create an environment that would be so polluted to the extent that when we hit 2027, then inadvertently we allow Ruto again to rule this country.
Don't you think also
5
these
years.
coalitions are getting a bit tacky, because now we have also formations within the formation itself. We have Kamene of Mount Kenya that is meant to be counter-intuitive or countermanding, you know, some of the voices within Mount Kenya. We don't know if they will hold within Azimio as well. And if you are talking about we should be holding together, and now we have different voices, of course. It could be one, it is a political strategy that you want to use as a decoy and a ruse to deflect the attention that, you know, Raila or Kalonzo will be on the ballot in 2027. So you want to keep you also secrets up your collective sleeves close to your heart, or
I know there is a plan. I know there is a plan within Azimio to approach 2027. But again, the way we communicate may end up confusing our supporters.
Indeed.
We need not to pollute the environment to the extent that we start fighting. Because Kalonzo has his supporters, Raila does have his supporters, Martha Karua has. So we need to have a harmonious way of communicating. Even if you are to cause confusion on the other side, which we are doing anyway, we need to do it in a manner that we respect each other. And these other groupings coming up, some you'd understand, you know, someone like Martha Karua still is fighting for space within Central Province or Central Region. So she needs to go ahead and do that. I wanted to disagree with Honorable Manzo's opinion that Raila is not able to get support from Central. Remember, Raila has always gotten less than 1% from Central Kenya. But in the last election, we got about 20%. If the results which were declared by Chebukati is anything to go by, what can stop that from moving from 20 to 30 to 40%? Especially with this disappointment of the current regime, the promise to hustle a nation that has turned out to be like a curse to them. So you cannot rule it out that the Central Kenya will still not vote for Raila. I am not saying we failed Raila in 2027. My opinion may be, yes, we failed him. But the decision of the coalition which I belong to will be the one that I support. The moment a decision is reached, the moment Raila sits down, and by the way, this is not a decision for all of us. Let's be honest. This is a decision for Raila, Kalonzo to sit, and a few of these people who are interested in presidency in Azimio to say, I'm not interested in presidency in 2027. So I may not even have much say in that discussion. They sit down like they did in 2022, wherever they sat, and in various places, and agree that for us to defeat this oppressive regime, this regime that is not concerned about the plight of Kenyans, for us to defeat it, we have to compromise, we have to sacrifice. That is what we did in 2002. I will tell you, I was at Uhuru Park, and I never imagined at any time that we would support Kibaki for president. And when Raila said Kibaki tosha, I was left confused where I was seated. But that was the most desirable decision at that time. Let me leave it to also Senator Manzo so that I can...
So, Senator, you still stand by your words there? That...
Well, you know, there are many things which guide. There are many things which guide politics, and I can see, you know, sometimes my friend, good friend, Murathe, can be misleading. Murathe comes from central Kenya, and he knows what happened in central Kenya, and he is very familiar with central Kenya politics. And unfortunately, as a nation, that's what has pulled us back, because we think tribally instead of thinking what is best for Kenyans. And I want to just take you a little bit back. There are 22 million registered voters. Raila Odinga got 7 million. Ruto got 7 million. 7 million never voted. And another 1 million or so either passed on or disappeared in one thing. So you can imagine the decision would have been different if these 7 million people who never participated in the poll did participate. After the very difficult moments, and you remember that campaign then was that Rift Valley helped Central Kenya in forming the Uhuru government, and therefore they had a debt, and they were threatened by many other factors, including security of Central Kenya originees living in the Rift Valley, of which there are experiences in 2007. Where people were buried in shallow graves, having been killed in violence, and were hurriedly buried in shallow graves from Central Kenya origin, so that they are not eaten by dogs. It was a very serious sight those days, and many Kenyans know. And therefore, politics hasn't been easy in those two regions, and especially when they don't work together. And out of these threats, Central Kenya was forced to behave in a certain way. And again also, because we discussed in Parliament with the leaders from these regions, they said we want to pay this debt because it is very expensive, although we owe many people debts. We owe Raila Odinga a debt of 202, we owe Kalonzo Musyoka a debt of 207, and that's the politics of debts. But that notwithstanding, where Kenyans are today, we now need to change the politics. It doesn't change overnight. That regional thinking and tribalism is still a factor in 2027. So Kenyans are not just looking at two choices. If you just give them choices they don't want, then some of them don't vote at all. They don't waste their time. So we want choices where Kenyans can feel very comfortable going to vote for a leader who will prosper the country. Under this attitude of the current government that we must be in power, whether you like it or not. We must win this election, whether you like it or not. I
want to substantiate your statement here, but because you say that the former Prime Minister, has tried thrice, but failed, adding that even if they still support Raila, Central Kenya will still reject him.
Yes,
you seem to be very confident.
It's a statement of fact. And
you know, that is what I want to work. How factual is that?
Yes. I want to go into the factuality of it. And you see what has happened before. We have seen that trade in 2013, and we have seen that trade in 2017. We have seen it in 2022 thrice.
But Honorable Bani seems to give you that statement really that flies in the face of what you're saying, that there was a difference there, 20%, and that could exponentially rise with maybe 2027.
Well, unfortunately, the politics hasn't changed. Unfortunately. If the politics had changed, and they changed.
Which is the politics?
The politics are, you know, the Central Kenya has continuously voted in a certain manner, not in favor of Honorable Raila Odinga, and it is something driven by certain politicians. It is a political weapon used against him. If the people of Central Kenya were voted freely without be put into that concept, unfortunately that concept is there, and it is like now cancer. It is malignant. It does not die. So how do you expect it to die in 2 or 3? The point I was trying to make is that Azimio Kenya, Azimio coalition should be smarter in its mathematics and just shift his ideas a little bit to accommodate Central Kenya voting system. That's what I was trying to say. And it's a reality.
Thank you.
It's a reality. So we need to think so that free Kenyans out of be held in a political cocoon or in a region, so that Kenyans can think freely. And part of it means a lot of giving away and a lot of, so for the betterment of the nation and for the nation to prosper and to succeed. That doesn't mean one is left out completely.
All right. Honorable Badi, even as we bring it to a close, you have any other statements regarding that, or this is a wait and see? It seems if it's communication, then it's poorly done, because Dan Mazo seemed to be reading from a different script. If there is a strategy, then he's not read the strategy paper, as it were. But also, if the director may just pick up this particular editorial cartoon as we're winding up, I wanted us to comment on it. This is the Inspector General Kome, and we can see there's sort of a reshuffle that has been done because of what he terms as public blunders. I don't know if it's this part of blunders that came during the birthday of Raila Odinga when he was turning 79. 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. Happy birthday, Baba. And we see, yes, the cake there was going down. People could not really celebrate peacefully. There were tear gas that were being lobbed. Where were you? You as the chair of ODM.
I was in the village. I was in my village celebrating Baba's birthday in my own style. But you see, I really don't know who issued this instruction, because someone must have instructed the police officers to lobby tear gas.
Yeah. They are men under order.
Yes. Really, it was completely uncalled for. That event, at least what I saw in social media, was very peaceful. And there is no any other video, picture, or photo to the contrary. So why was this done, you ask yourself? And now to come to Kome, I think it is not just about reshuffling. If there are problems in the police service, then heads should roll. And actually, one of the institutions that this constitution tried to reform was the security sector. We even created a commission. We would want to see, and we have the police oversight authority is there. We need to see some action taken against, if there was any rogue police officer or instruction came from a rogue police officer, then that officer should be dealt with. We don't want to hear of reshuffling, because when you reshuffle them from here, from Nairobi, you take them to Makueni, they are going to continue with the bad manners in Makueni. They will tomorrow disrupt the birthday party of Senator from Makueni County, Honorable Manzo, and that is not something that we need to encourage. On the issue, again, I want to repeat, on this issue of the flag bearer of 2027 in Azimio, and I want to really persuade my brother here that we need to be cautious. Actually, this talk about Central Kenya, I have said it, and I want to repeat again. Yes, it is true that a lot of propaganda was sold to the Central Kenya electorate. Let me say the ethnic community there, about Raila Odinga and the entire Luo community, how bad we are. And when you listen to some of the stories that were told, and I'm one of the Luos, you really be shocked that something like that could be said about you. But that is politics, the uncivilized politics that we have in this country. It takes a while or time to really, again, debunk it. Part of it, which is that Raila ni Muganga. I have operated very close, I've worked with Raila very closely. And I will tell you, if there's anyone who doesn't believe in those powers that people sometimes talk about, it's him. He, yes, encourages our culture to be respected, but he is a Christian. And about Muganga, about how Raila would torment, frustrate the Central Kenya people, it is there. But remember, in the last election, 20% of them at least were persuaded to vote for him. There's nothing that will stop that percentage from rising. And by the way, there is no evidence, previously or even opinion polls, that Kalonzo would fare better in Central Province. So we are just hopeful. And we can discuss this as Azimio coalition. Is it Kalonzo or Raila? There are some of us, Manzo, who are also saying that there are Kenyans who are so closely associated with Raila's policies that transferring their vote is not very easy. You may not transfer the votes of the coastal people who have been rallying behind Raila for donkey years. The Maasai people who have idolized Raila, they have really looked upon him like a fighter, a brave leader. And over the years have supported him. The Turkana people, the vote from Western Kenya. It is all, we have to discuss this.
Thank you.
And again, if Kalonzo does not support Raila, would we get the same votes from from Eastern Province? It's not possible. So these are realities that we must discuss.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
We need to leave it at that. Honorable Manzo, your closing remarks, just
So I
10
really
seconds.
want to say that the situation in the Inspector General of Police is unfortunate. You saw the demolitions in Voi. He was correcting issues. So who is commanding the police force? And I really want to tell him that the Constitution requires him to do his job. If he allows politicians to interfere with the police force, he may find himself in a difficult corner unnecessarily. We need to protect Kenyans.
Thank you. Thank you. What a treat, Dan Mazo, Senator Makueni. I really do appreciate you waking up early this morning and being with us here, at least just picking your brains on the latest development in our politics as well. Also, Honorable John Burley, thank you for coming through. We really do appreciate this morning your presence and your contribution. So, and this year, we hope to see more of your face here, right? Thank you so much for that salutative gesture that you've given us this morning, and a lot of information that, of course, you've given us. We really do appreciate Dan Mazo. As we close, we have one of my lecturers here is saying that kindly ask your panelist, what is the fate of adults education? I think this is for another day. Yani Gumbaru, as KCP is now first out. Happy New Year, right? Gumbaru is no more as well. But we want to thank you. That was my lecturer, international procurement there, who was just asking that particular question. But I want to say thank you for your valid company. Don't go away. News Diary is coming up next year on KTN News.